Hello and welcome to ThePrint. India has donated $2.5 million to a key UN body that supports Palestinian refugees. And this comes at a time when major powers like the US and the UK have frozen their funds to this agency. Let's unpack why this is important. On Monday, India released the first tranche of $2.5 million to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, UNRWA or UNRWA. And this is part of India's annual contribution of $5 million for the financial year towards this UN agency. This brings India's total contributions to UNRWA to $39.5 million. Dr. Abed El-Zarag Abu Jazar, Counselor of Political and Media at the Embassy of the State of Palestine in India, told ThePrint, India joins the countries that restored funding to UNRWA, even though India did not stop this support previously. It emphasizes the failure of Israeli attempts to target UNRWA, its role, and attempts to replace it with other institutions. According to Israeli journalist and political commentator Lev Aran, India's support for UNRWA should not be seen as a strategic move and should be seen more as emergency aid. Now, why is this important? In January this year, 16 countries, including the UK, US, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, the Netherlands, Canada, Australia, Japan, and many more, cut funding to the UN agency UNRWA. However, almost all have resumed funding, barring the US, the UK, and New Zealand. In April, an independent review panel released a report stating that Israel has not provided enough evidence to support its accusations that a significant number of UNRWA employees are members of Hamas. And if you recall, it was these allegations that caused 16 of these countries to pull funding from UNRWA. Now, this independent review panel blamed Israel for financially hobbling the agency and depriving it of around $450 million. The UN Secretary General went on to accept the findings of this independent review panel's report. UNRWA serves 5.9 million Palestinian refugees in Gaza, the West Bank, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. It is funded almost entirely by voluntary contributions from UN member states, which is why what happened earlier this year took such a toll on the agency. Let's now look at the history of India's contributions to UNRWA. India began financial support to this agency in 2002, far later than the US and the European Union, which began donations in the 1950s and 1970s, respectively. From 2009 to 2015, India contributed $1 million each year, until this was increased to $1.25 million every year from 2016 to 2017. And this is according to UN data. In 2018, India increased its annual donation to $5 million a year, and since then has dispersed this in two tranches of $2.5 million each. The tranche released earlier this week was the first this year thus far. Now, following the allegations by Israel earlier this year that some UNRWA personnel had links to Hamas, many countries paused funding to the agency, including one of its biggest donors, the US. If we look at the data, the US has consistently provided the UN agency upwards of $200 million every year, with the European Union close behind at about $90 million. Last week, during the UNRWA pledging conference in New York, India said that in addition to financial assistance, it will provide medicines to UNRWA based on the agency's request. And this was received favorably by the Palestinian side. Before we wrap up, let's look at India's stance on the Israel-Hamas war since it broke out last October. When the war first broke out, Narendra Modi, the first ever Indian PM to visit Israel, condemned the 7th October attack by Hamas and expressed solidarity with Israel. It set India apart from reactions in the global south and hewed closer to the positions of the US and other G7 countries at the time. 5 days later, the Ministry of External Affairs clarified that India maintains its long-standing position on the need for a two-state solution. Thanks for watching. This is Pia Krishnankuti for ThePrint.